1.5 Solving Quadratic Equations Part 3. Today we're going to be solving using completing the square, but before we do that, let's do a little warm up, see if we remember how to simplify this radical. We see that it has a negative 50, so negative 50 we're going to turn into I square root of 50. While we also make a separate square root for the denominator. So we kind of did two steps at once there. Split the radical, numerator and denominator, and then also pulled the negative out and turned it into an I. All right, so we have two different things we need to take care of. We need to simplify the square root of 50, and we also need to get the square root of 3 out of the denominator. You can do those in any order. So let's say you wanted to simplify the square root of 50 first. That would be the square root of 25 times the square root of 2. And the square root of 25 is 5. So we'd say 5i radical 2 over the square root of 3. Now we need to get that radical 3 out of the denominator. So we are going to multiply numerator and denominator by the square root of 3. Doing so in the denominator gives us just 3, and our numerator 5i radical 6, because 2 times 3 is 6. We then need to check to see if there's any simplifying that can be done. There are no perfect squares that go into 6, and 5 and 3 don't have any common factors, so they can't be reduced either. So that is our final answer. All right, next I'm going to show you steps for completing the square. I would recommend pausing the video so you can write them down. We're going to move c to the other side, add b divided by 2 squared to both sides, factor so that it's x plus b over 2 squared, and then solve, which means we're going to take the square root of both sides. Anytime you take a square root, you have to remember to put a plus or minus. All right, so let's try going through those steps. So again, if you don't have time to write it down, just pause the video, write it down, and hop back on. Okay, so step 1, move our c value to the other side. So this is ax squared plus bx plus c right here. So this is our c value. We're going to move it to the other side. So add 8. So we have x squared plus 4x equals 8. And you'll notice I left a little blank after the 4x. That's because we're going to fill it in with something here in a minute. Next, we take b divided by 2 squared and add it to both sides. So here's our b value. We're going to divide it by 2 and square it. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. Squared is 4. We're going to take that answer and add it to both sides. So we're going to add a 4 on the left and add a 4 on the right. The next step says to factor. So this part here, x squared plus 4x plus 4, always factors to x plus half of b. So b was 4, half of it is 2, quantity squared. The other side equals 12. And then the last step is to solve by taking the square root of both sides. You take the square root on the left, you get x plus 2. You take the square root on the right, you have to put a plus or minus with it, so plus or minus square root of 12. And then we need to do some simplifying. One thing we need to do is subtract that 2 over. It always goes in front of the plus or minus. And then we need to break down the 12. So 4 and 3 go into 12. That would leave us 2 radical 3. All right, let's try all of that again. I would recommend writing it down, hit pause, try to solve it on your own, and then come back and kind of check and see if you got the right answer. All right, so first step is to move c to the other side. So we have x squared minus 10x equals negative 17. And then you want to take your b value, divide it by 2, and square it. That gives us 25. We're going to add that to both sides. So we're going to take that 25 and add it to the left side and add it to the right side. So when we factor the left, now we get x plus half of b. Half of b is negative 5. So it would be x minus 5 squared equals 8. And then we're going to take the square root of both sides. So we have x minus 5 on the left, plus or minus square root of 8 on the right. And then do some simplifying. Add 5 over, always goes before the plus or minus. And then perfect square that goes into 8 is 4, so we'd end up with 2 radical 2 as our final answer. So that is how we would solve by completing the square.